Welcome to another episode of Talking with WIT Kevin and Son, featuring people you should know. Hi, I'm Kevin McLemore. I am your show host. I'm a 4 times published author, matter of fact, an award-winning author, speaker, and mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is to give power to your voice, inspire, share stories and experiences and perspective using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. We showcase people you should know. Our purpose is very simple. We want to provide hope, helping other people every single day. So let me say this to you, whatever your objective is, successful people create a framework around their day-to-day lives that sometimes not only enhances theirs, but like my guest today, they pour into others. This episode will explore the world that you may or may not know, or lead you to explore the world that you should know. It will inspire you by the loss of both. She is inspired by both the loss of her parents during the pandemic. Today's guest will share her story of grief and loss and how finding purpose has led her to self-transformation and how finding the hidden message within her own heart that helped her find purpose and loss and the power to help others to heal as well. Today's guest is a distinguished global leader and an expert in overcoming loss and finding purpose. With her new TED Talk coming out on the same subject, her message is living with purpose goes far beyond the loss, but she's also doing a deep dive into one's soul. A native of Los Angeles, she is now residing in my home state, Ohio. She's a wife. She's a dog lover. She enjoys traveling in her camper, My Dream Life. And she is the host of her own podcast, and she speaks on the topic of transformation through loss. Today, we will talk about life, loss, healing. And if you stay with us long enough, you will learn how to heal and find your purpose. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me welcome my distinguished guest and friend, Miss Julie Trainer. How you doing, Julie?
I'm well, Kevin. Thank you so much for that introduction. Wow,
Well,
that was lovely.
well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I almost called you Jay. And for those of you who don't know, that in the event that I slip up, instead of calling you Julie, Jay, in my neighborhood, when we embrace or welcome someone into our community, you get a nickname. So JT would normally be her nickname in my neighborhood. So Julie Trainer will do that. So in the event that I do slip up, you feel free to correct me. So the pandemic had its way with all of us. I won't say some of us. I know for me, personally, I lost in 2 months 14 people that I was close to. And it was devastating, especially with knowing that we could not have funeral service. We couldn't have positioned ourselves to say farewell to not only the ones we lost, but the people that shared our loss. My birthday's coming up, and I wrote to a group of friends, age is a privilege denied by many. What do you say to that?
First, I'm so sorry for your loss of 14 people. That's absolutely devastating, and my heart really just goes out to you. Your statement of age is a privilege denied to many is absolutely true, and I think sometimes it's something you don't fully grasp until you've lost someone dear to you. Um, and having had that experience, uh, it 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 definitely altered my perspective on life. Live every day. Don't take anything for granted. That was one of the things that helped me was looking for things to be grateful for, even in the midst of loss.
I know this subject is challenging, no matter if it's 24 hours after learning the loss of someone or 24 years of losing someone. Um, you know, uh, this month, this is 2024, and as podcasters know, we're not supposed to date ourselves, but reality is that these things will live on forever. The conversation has no age and has no expiration date. And the conversation that we're having right now will affect every single person on this earth at some point, either now, 60 seconds from now, 2 weeks from now, a year from now, a month from now. I know when we talked earlier off camera, we talked about um, finding purpose. Now, the hard part is one, getting the news, surviving the news, and I think there's 5 stages of grief, and I'm going to ask you to go through um, your story and tell our audience so they can get to know you. As one, tell us about what you do right now and how you came about doing what you do and why.
Well, I'll start with getting the news. Um, it was January 3rd of 2020, and my mother and I texted each other more than we called. And she would always text me with cute little emojis. And I had received it. The last text I had received from her was her cute emoji holding balloons that said, "I hope 2020 will be a great year for us all." 3 days later, I received the text that said, "I found out what's been wrong with me. Please call me." And in my mind, that just marks the before and after of what was to come. None of us knew what was to come in 2020 anyway, but that day I learned that she had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And I immediately took leave from my job and flew out to California to be with her. I initially thought I was just going to stay for 10 days and then perhaps return when things got worse. But as it turned out, um, because her cancer wasn't really curable after the first round of after the first chemo, she just really crashed. And the the dying process, I had 10 weeks with her. And because lockdown happened right at the beginning of that, in many ways, as COVID did for all of us, that presented a whole host of challenges. But one of the things that when I look back, I see as a gift was that during that time of isolation and lockdown, I had nothing else really to do, no distractions than to take care of my mom. And I see that now as something to be grateful for because, as many people, possibly yourself too, you weren't even able to be with a loved one, either if it was by distance, there were no flights, or the person was in isolation. There were just so many scenarios that none of us could ever have prepared for. So I was with her for the 10 weeks, and it was the first time that I experienced what I call a life-altering death. I had lost grandparents, but they weren't someone who, was in my day-to-day life. But your mother or a parent, that's just profound. And it changed me. Like I like to say, it rearranged me. And I couldn't go back to just business as usual. I found myself thinking about death like all the time. Um, I'm not someone who cries easily, but I would just randomly find myself sobbing for like a solid year. And then my dad died in that following year, almost a year to the day of losing my mom. And I found myself needing to talk about it all the time. And I thought, "Yeah, I need to connect with people who are now in this club, right? You don't know what it's going to be like until you experience it." And I felt such a strong need to connect with other people who had gone through this kind of a loss. And that's what made me decide to start a podcast. I wanted to give a space for people to share those stories and have the experience of really being deeply listened to. And then the podcast is what led to the TEDx that I just did on November 4th. And my life looks completely different than before that loss. And so
Well,
in some ways, I'm grateful for it.
before we go into your TEDx talk, and congratulations for that. I hope one day that I'll have that part as my resume. I've yet to come up with a subject to do this, but one of the things that I've learned and I've taught, you've always, I want to know how to properly react to when you share your loss with someone else. And I know in my thinking, when someone does this, um, I feel a certain type of way. Is that when you say that you just lost your parents, everyone has it seems like their loss has to one up you. I just lost this or this and that and so forth. What is the proper response to
Mm.
someone sharing or grieving with another person? Or how do you interpret when someone automatically starts to talk about their loss in the same time that they're ignoring? And this is the way that I interpret it. I don't know if it's right or wrong. You're the professional. I think a lot of times we don't listen to what's being said to us and we want to be heard, um, instead of being there to support and grieve, even though we're standing there saying that we want to be supportive or asking what can we do, which we all know the answer. It's like you can't do anything because you can't bring them back. What is the proper response when someone tells you they're having a bad day and they just lost someone?
That's such a good question. And I think when someone shares that with us, a lot of times it makes us uncomfortable because we don't know what to say. And I think there's like a desire to connect. And so I think that's why people might immediately start sharing, oh yes, well, I lost, you know. But what I've found is, sometimes we're afraid to say, to even ask someone because we're thinking, well, I don't want to make them sad, I don't want to make them cry. But the fact is, they're already sad. So what I've found is to give them space to share, ask them, tell me about your, you know, your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad. Tell me about them. What's a story that really stands out for you? Or what's the thing that that you're missing? Or now that they're gone, have you had any experiences where you feel their presence sometimes? And what's that like? Those are some of the questions that come to mind that I found or would have found helpful right after that loss because it invites you to share.
Um, yeah, I take it because I know you. You're an amazing parent, and I know most of us are um, just a little bit of a shadow of our parents. How much of you today is like your mother? And tell me two of the most revealing things about her that are part of your character, and share with us one thing that brought happiness to you, a moment in time with you and your mom. And I'll ask you the same questions about your dad.
I have a word for that. Mother morphosis.
Hmm.
It's when all of a sudden you find yourself turning into your mother. Oh, there's so many things that's funny that you asked that. Well, one thing that my mother was, if nothing else, my mother was kind and she loved to give gifts to almost to a fault because she could not pass up a clearance sale. She had a massive collection of stuff in the garage, all in these bins, I think when online shopping became a thing, it that was kind of the beginning of the end. It was just, this was on clearance. I don't like these shoes. I'm never going to wear these shoes, but they were $5. So I'm going to buy them. And she had these quirky things like that. And it, It's kind of funny, but my daughter and I kind of share this. Like, it's kind of one of our fun things that we like to do. We love going shopping for a good sale, but I try to limit it to things that I'm actually going to use. But that was cute. And one time I was standing in the garage with her. It was, when she was sick, but while she could still walk around. And I just asked her, what is it about Christmas and all these gifts? Oh, Christmas was her thing. What is it about it? And she just looked at me and she just said, I just like to give. And she was this just giving, kind person. And that's one of the things that I feel like I have, that I'm able to really embody and that absolutely came from her. She made you feel cared about just by being, just by being her. She was somebody you could always talk to. And I feel like I have that as well, that you can always talk to me. You can talk to me about anything. And I'm not going to judge and, I'm not going to shut you up. I want to be that place where people feel safe. I don't know if
Now
that
for
was
your
too.
father,
Okay, so
uh,
my
the,
father,
the head of the household, supposed to be the man, supposed to be tough. But I know from listening to you and whatever, your father was a lovable character. He was fun to be around. So tell us about the qualities of your father and how you've adapted, or what qualities you're moving on with your life from your dad.
yeah, and my dad, that's a different story. My dad, my dad was, well, I feel like my dad was like unfulfilled in his life. He was a postal worker, but he was also brilliant. He was only interested in a very narrow range of topics. He was interested in sports, World War II, football, and I'd say guns. Um, he loved going to the range and shooting, but he was angry. He was angry a lot. And I could see that, I mean, as a child, that was scary, but I could also see as I got older that, this is generational trauma. He was, he came out of a similar kind of situation, a super kind mother and a scary father, right? So I watched him not feel fulfilled in his life. And that created this drive, this like quest in me to what I want, a fulfilled life. I want what I'm doing to be meaningful to me. And I feel like I feel like indirectly that's what I got from my dad. And I will add here that after going through all of this and observing my father watching his wife die, he wasn't really equipped emotionally for that. So he really just zoned out on TV, which is what he had always done, right? But in my heart, I began to just feel so much compassion for him, even though yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what he was experiencing because he didn't really share, emotionally. He was very closed off, but one of the things that came out of loss was so much compassion and forgiveness for him and for both of them.
At any time, did you ever ask him how was he doing? How was he holding up after the loss of your mom? I know he passed away shortly after.
He did. And, that's an interesting thing too. In my entire life, my dad never actually picked up the phone and called me. Not, not ever. My mom would call and then she'd put him on, so it was always kind of awkward. And it was awkward for me to like call him, but I made myself do it just to check up on him and see how he was doing. He would usually talk about more surface things. We talk about the dog. We talk about the squirrels that he fed in the backyard. He didn't really delve into the emotion. Um, but I am so glad that I made those connections with him and just was there and just talked to him. Because I was always, this might sound odd, but I was always a little bit nervous to call him. But then after I did, it would actually end up going really well. And we would end up having a conversation that felt comfortable to me. Now his death happened. He actually had COVID, but they didn't know. And he fell in the house. And unfortunately, my brother didn't find him until 24 hours later. So he also had heart failure, and it was exacerbated by COVID. So he was like in isolation on a COVID ward for several weeks until he was moved into care. And I actually went home not knowing that he was about to pass. We didn't know that. I went home because we knew we had to sell their house because he wasn't going to be able to go back home. He wasn't going to be able to get into the house, go up the stairs, do all those really basic things for himself. In fact, without my mom, I think he struggled to do any basic things for himself. They were of that generation where the woman did all the things, cooked all the food. She would even put his coffee grounds in the Mr. Coffee the night before. And I asked her why, and she said, "Oh, he'll make a big mess. He'll get coffee grounds everywhere. I have to do it." So while I was home and we were preparing to sell the house, and that's a whole story because of all this stuff. But the very last night I ever spent in my childhood home, there was this earthquake that woke me up at 5 a.m. And later that day at noon, we learned that he had passed from the people at the care home. And I thought that would be just like him to go out with a bang.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Um, our parents play a big part of molding who we are. Sometimes they are artists in the art of passing on what was passed down to them as far as what they knew, and they knew better. And then you become the architect of your own life. Um, you're helping other people heal through purpose. How does living today, living with a loss, how do you open up the conversation or even open up to your heart of healing and then finding purpose? How does that happen?
I think what happened for me was I didn't resist the grief. One of my biggest fears about losing my mom was, what is that grief going to feel like? What's the weight of that going to be? And how am I going to cope with that? Um, I was like really afraid of that. And there was this, there was this one night where I was lying in my childhood bedroom and a song came on Spotify and it broke my heart open. And I literally this was the anticipatory grief. I was literally just sobbing, realizing this is it. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm not going to go home and call her later when I get back. Um, but something happened in that moment where I realized that, okay, so this is what it's going to feel like. And then I just had this knowing I can handle this. It feels horrible, but I can handle it. And so afterwards, when I found myself grieving, I didn't resist it. You know that saying, run toward the barking dog.
Hmm.
I just dove in I surrendered really to the grief. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in trying to be stoic, right? Or trying to we push it down. We've got to deal with life, the kids, our jobs. So we just suppress it. And, over time, that can lead to, illness, depression, so many things because we're carrying that in our bodies. And that's how the healing started for me. One thing was running towards the grief, and the other thing was realizing that I needed help. I had friends and my family were there, but it was an isolating experience too. In fact, that's when my daughter moved out. She actually was with me and helped me care for my mom. But when we came back home, she didn't grieve in the same way. She didn't want to talk about it. She couldn't think about it. And she was triggered by my grief. So she left. And and I realized that I needed help. And that's when I connected with an end of life doula. And I can't recommend enough having an end of life doula. I didn't know that that was really a thing when I was caring for my mom. It would have been great. An end of life doula is somebody that supports the family and supports the dying, but he or she is a non-medical person. They're there more for emotional support. And because of this was after the fact, what she did for me was deeply listen. She witnessed my grief and my experience over a period of several months where we would just talk for about an hour every Sunday. And she was the one that really helped me start to see the hidden gifts and to see that grief itself is is healing. It's like think of like going through a loss as really like an initiation into like this death club that none of us want to really be in, but it's inevitable, like you said, Kevin, at the beginning. We're all going to go through it. And because it kind of became an initiation, having that deep witness helped me see that the grief itself, if you think of emotion like water, it has to move, it has to go somewhere. And by letting it go through and just wash through you, it can release that energy, that sadness, and by releasing it, it starts to lighten that load a little bit. At least that was the case for me. Now, every loss is different, so there's no right way. But that was one of the most helpful things, or two of the most helpful things. Feel the grief and get support from someone who's qualified.
Now, does a qualified person, when you talk about this deaf doula, is this someone that actually has been on the other side of the conversation she's having with you? Is that what makes them the expert? Or this is someone who has not experienced personal death?
I don't have statistics, but I would say almost everyone who goes into that has experienced death. Um, my personal death doula experienced the death of a close friend at the age of 12, and no one talked about it. Her friends, the girl's family, no one talked about it. And she said it was so hard and it was so confusing. She had all these feelings and she didn't know what to do with them. And that led her down that path of wanting to help people. And she also had some experiences that I don't know people. I, I'm very open to the idea of having the experience of that your loved one showing up in some kind of way. I'm not saying like, a ghost walks in the room, but little things, little coincidences. She began to have that, and it was very strong for her. And so she's able to validate people like, yeah, no, don't think that didn't happen. Don't dismiss that as being something your brain made up. So she's helps support people in kind of trusting that kind of communication. Not everybody has that. Not everybody experiences communication with their departed loved ones. I have in subtle ways. But yeah, I think most of the end of life doulas, in fact, the organization that I reached out to, the woman who created the program was a hospice nurse. And her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and died 6 weeks later. And what was available um, was just not enough. The kind of support that she was able to find, it just wasn't, hospice is amazing. I have so much respect, but there's only so much, they're there to take care of the more of the physical aspects of dying, not as much the emotional, and they don't even, and in the medical establishment, death is kind of seen as like, you know, the thing you want to fight against no matter what, right? I mean, that's what you do in medicine. You're trying to save people from death, but that's not always helpful emotionally for people who are going through it. So she created this program to train people to become end of life doulas, and my doula was someone that was going through her training. And part of what she did for me was part of like an internship to work with someone going through a loss.
Right. I know for me preparing for this conversation, um, I'm trying not to break a rule in podcasting, to share more of my story than yours, but I have more questions than I have answers. And this month coming up for me, is a hallmark month, um, as you say, in regards to this subject. When I go back and say Thanksgiving morning, I went to visit my oldest brother that was not supposed to survive because he had cancer that last Thanksgiving 3 years ago, and only found out that my youngest brother passed away that morning. And then turn around the 15th of December when I normally will celebrate my birthday, my twin sister's birthday, and my oldest daughter's birthday, the 10th, 11th, and the 12th. On the 15th, my youngest sister at 42 unexpectedly died. On Christmas, the 23rd of December, my grandfather passed away. And then the 24th of December, my father passed away 3 years after losing his father. I have a lot of friends that have foundations that celebrate the life and loss of a loved one. I don't know if it's right or wrong. Is it reopening a wound that's never healing, or a slow healing wound, or wound that will never heal? When we hallmark these dates of a loss, I don't know what the right or wrong. Are we living while dying, or are we dying trying to live? When we hallmark these dates, what exactly is happening?
Wow, that's that's deep, and I'm so sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry.
No, I know. My
It,
instinct as
it,
a
and
podcaster is to ask you questions now.
well, feel free to ask me questions. I will tell you. My mother, right now, at 92 years of age, she'll be 93, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'm a fixer. I want to get everything right, give her the best doctors and whatever. And my mother turned to me and says, and she said it this way, and she looked at me with this very deadpan look. She goes, "You are the most selfish person I've ever met in my life." I'm going, "What, Mom?" And she says, "You're selfish." And I said, "Why am I selfish?" I said, I've reached a point in my life that I'm in a position where I can help, and I want to help. And she says, "I'm 92 years old, baby." She goes, "This is God's will. This is God's way." And she goes, "Going through chemo and everything else, is that going to make me feel any better?" She said, I've lived a full life. And I realized what bravery was. One, courage is bravery. But my mother had enough gumption to tell me off in such a pleasant way that I'm repeating it on my podcast and your story. And then for me to face reality is that, there's a circle of life. All right. We all are energy. Sometimes we live with the first stage of life, thinking that the birthday, that little dash between, that other number is never going to come in, denial. And then we get to the second stage that we argue with ourselves in a debate. You know, why didn't I call more? Why wasn't I there? Why didn't you tell me? What could I have done? And then we start bargaining with ourselves, which is the third stage. We start making excuses of why life got too busy and we're going to do better. And then we go into the stage of what they call the dream weaver, is that, okay, this is what we're going to do now. I'm going to do this better and whatever. And we fall back. And then the last stage, which most people struggle with, is the acceptance of the loss. I know I played my father's, called his answering machine for a year until his phone was disconnected just to hear his voice every Sunday. So how do we heal? And how do we find purpose? Before I go on to that, how do people reach you? I want to go through that and then let people know you do exist.
The best way to reach me is in my on my Facebook community, which is the Hidden Gifts of Loss Facebook community. And I created that as kind of like a landing page for my podcast guests, or anyone going through a loss. And it's if you go to that group and join, there's a couple membership questions, and then you're, part of the community, and we share stories there. I like to do I call them candle chats, where it's kind of open for everyone to come on and to share a story about your loved one. People share stories in the group all the time. So that would be the easiest way. You can watch my TEDx as well. If you Google, not Google, but in YouTube, it's Julie Trainer TEDx Cincinnati. You can watch that there. And my podcast is Hidden Gifts of Loss. And I welcome people with stories to come on my podcast. I'm kind of fascinated by these stories that a lot of times we don't talk about. I think that they help other people too. They help other people hear when other people hear about these losses and you see these people have been able to keep going and have triumphed over, not triumphed so much, but just hearing a story, like the story that you're telling me, all those losses you had and so close together, and here you are, you're talking, you're spreading this message of helping. What is it? Hope, helping others ever.
People every day.
I love that. That's so needed. It's so important. We need that energy. I feel like almost now more than ever with things that are going on. We've gone through this major pandemic, like unprecedented loss for us in the modern world. Just I think creating community is that's how we can heal. And you said something about the dates. To me, keeping their memory alive is important. And I know those anniversaries are so hard. There's something about that. They got easier for me, but the first one, and I didn't realize it was going to take me out that day. I just didn't even function the first year anniversary. But
See,
they've gotten
the reason why,
easier.
yeah, the reason why I asked you that question earlier, because I wanted to confirm in my mind if if I was doing the right thing, because I didn't seek out the conversation. I know I have a younger brother that every time my father's birthday, February 22nd, comes up, my youngest brother, my baby brother, has a hard time. Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas, my brother has a hard time. And he turns into self-manipulation, emotional destruction
Mm.
of dad, grandpa. And I always pick up the phone and I call him before he walks up to the ledge, and I try to make sure he doesn't get to the ledge. My way of dealing is the same way when people ask me to write. I always, when people ask me, why do I write? I always say that when someone, you never die when someone is constantly repeating your story, your life lives. And that's the reason why I asked you to talk about the positive things about your parents, because now that that's out there, you can't take it back. And I know for one, my love for reading is from my grandfather. My grandfather had an eighth grade education and had to take care of his family.
Mm.
My father had the most vivacious smile, um, that any human being. I mean, he would light up the room. I've said it in my book. My father's smile will light up Bourbon Street. But what really hit me, and the reason why I'm doing this interview, is because finding my purpose of hope, helping other people every day, I realized that I had suppressed a lot through staying positive and moving on, and then I had not addressed or grieved, because I was always the person in the family that, they said you're the strong one. I was always there to hold someone else's hand. I was always
Mm.
there to dry someone else's tear, but no
Mm.
one was ever in the room when I cried. And so when my younger sister passed away, I never put two and two together. I graduated from high school in 1977. She was born in 1979. You know, she was 42 years of age when she passed away. I'm in my 60s when she passed away. And I remember every single moment in time I shared with my little sister. I was a guest in her life. I did not have the same experiences I had with some of my other siblings when, you know, we got in trouble, we did things, we were mischievous, as my grandmother would say it. But my little sister's life, I was always pouring into her, and she was the most wonderful person. And out of that came my purpose. I wrote a book called I Had to Get the World Ready for You, which you are in the process of finalizing your book. And that's the reason why I said finding purpose is, let's help someone else find their purpose. Let's walk them through finding purpose. How do you do that?
Mm. That's a good question. I think first, you got to tune into what's in your heart. And that's where your purpose is going to come from. But there's a lot of noise around what we should do and what we should be and all of the obligations that we have. And I have to say, I spent so long trying to figure out what my purpose was. I just didn't know. I knew it was helping in some way. I got a psychology degree and but I think losing my parents, just like you said, losing your sister, it really I think death creates this heightened awareness and it really just you just get in touch with what's in your heart so much. And I think your purpose is born out of that. It's born out of your wound. I can't remember exactly how Joseph Campbell puts it, but there's an artist who I love. Her name is Lizzie Jeff, and she says, and one of the lines in her song that always really stuck with me, she says, "Did you know that your wound is the gateway to heaven on earth?" And I really had to think about that when I first heard that. And it's like, yeah, for some reason, that's where our passion seems to come from. It's that wound, and you can't ignore it. So you have to do something with it. It seems like purpose is often born out of pain. And how do we help somebody else find their purpose is such a good question because it's such a personal journey. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way to go about doing that. Things that you can do to tap in. I mean, these are going to sound like cliche things, but I know for me, writing and, meditation and doing something that makes you feel good too. It's important that you do things that make you feel good too. Dance when nobody is looking. I mean, for me, that's always been my go-to. Of course, therapy. I've done my share of therapy. But I wrote the whole time I was taking care of my mom, and it was like, this is the only thing that's keeping me sane, is writing. It gets it out. I think you got to get it out some kind of way, right? Whether you're writing, whether you're sharing with somebody, sometimes it's too hard to share. And then going within and writing, so helpful because I have all that writing now. So I'm not going to forget. And just like you said, once you put it out there is this part of them that's going to live forever. And I think that sort of became my purpose. I want to help them like live forever. I want to share their story because it keeps them alive. So that would be my initial answer to that question. And I'm not going to say that I have all the answers. I just know that those are the things that helped.
Believe in a time of a loss, even if it's sudden or you've been part of that journey or the last leg of the journey, it's the baton exchange of life that no one wants to really run, but we all are in the race, if I can say that. It's that little dash in the middle that either describes how you lived or how you didn't live. And that date is an exclamation point of how people are going to remember you.
Mm.
It's once that date becomes finite, there's no coming back. The only thing that happens is that if you lived a life worth remembering, people will continue to tell your stories. And if you lived a life that you become forgettable, your life ends.
Mm.
So let me ask you this. You got a book that you're working on that I'm reading a draft of it, so I'm not going to out your book, but give us some idea of what the book's about, when we should expect it, because now I'm putting an exclamation point on a date, so the book gets finished, it gets published, and gets out there, so you can come back on the show and we can talk about that, and then give us an idea of what people are going to take away from your TED Talk without giving away the TED Talk.
I like that exclamation point on the book. You were saying I hope I add a TED Talk to my resume. I want to add the book to my resume. I've been working on it for a while. So, um, what's the book about? It's really about, I want to say it's about forgiveness. It's about generational trauma. It's about healing. It's about a mother-daughter dynamics. and how they can shift with a shift in perspective. It's about hope that we can go through these things and have a life after loss. Um, that's like kind of the overarching, kind of the skywriting of the book, right? Themes that other people can relate to is really that healing and forgiveness and hope is what it's really about. But it's about, then, of course, it's a memoir, right? So there's the childhood stuff, kind of where the stuff all begins that kind of sets you up in life for the things that you are going to have to overcome. And those things that you have to overcome are the things that make you who you are, for better or worse, right? And when can we expect the book? Now, if I say this, I can't take it back, right?
Why do you think I asked you that?
I
Once
know.
he
I
put
like,
it out there, and that's the whole point of telling someone that's going to hold you accountable is to put an exclamation mark on it. When can we expect it?
I'm going to say, I'm going to say 2026. I hope it's sooner,
2026 is
but I'm going to
2020.
say,
We're coming to
gives me
the
a
end
year.
of 2020. Why 2026?
Well, I want to give myself a year to get it out there. So that feels like reasonable and doable to me right now.
Julie. All right,
Mm.
this is going to be
Okay,
Coach
you're going to
Kevin.
tap into my imposter syndrome now, Kevin.
I am going to tap into much more. I'm going to tap you upside the head right now. I am going to tell you. All right, took me a long time. Today is yesterday's tomorrow. All right. God does not promise you tomorrow. Whatever happened yesterday, you cannot go back. You can't edit it. You can't change it. You can't take it back, whatever. It's history. And that's the reason why there's history books. The only thing that you could be held accountable for is this moment right now, the 186 hours that's in a week, the 84,000 plus seconds that it's in a day, 365 days there in a year. All right. You don't get a second chance. Every time that God wakes you up in the morning, he gives you a second chance at this life. And he asks you, please, Julie, don't screw it up. Get it right today. All right. 2026 is not guaranteed, Julie.
You're right.
All right. And I will say this is on a pillow inside on my bedpost. It says procrastination is the first door that opens to mediocrity. My good friend Les Brown will tell you some of the greatest playwrights, poets, artists, musicians, educators, and creators are all celebrating birthdays every day in one place, and no one ever knows how great they were. It's because they all had 2026 dreams that came true, and 2024 changed their whole trajectory in their life, and their life ended, and they took those great masterpieces with them.
Mm.
So you mean to tell me we're going to talk about purpose, and you're going to take that with you?
No, no. Well, when you put it that way, okay. Well, then okay, here we go. Let's say October 25th, 2025.
All right,
That's a
we
shorter
still
time.
added
We
it's
still
still
getting,
we
we're not
still
getting,
added 11 more months to
we're
today.
not getting, that's my mom's birthday.
All
So,
right. Well, you know something? Let's bless your mom with the gift of your story. Now I'm going to bless you. Have a 20-something-odd-year-old daughter, and we're going to bless your daughter with your story. Do you journal?
yes,
All right. So I'm going to paint a picture for you. All right. I love telling stories. I love writing. I
me too.
love writing. And this
Me
is a
too.
person that had to teach himself twice how to read and write all over. And I'll tell you that story when I get a chance to be on your podcast. But this is the last entry into your journal. And this is when the exclamation point turns into a date. Not today, not tomorrow, not yesterday. It's your daughter's today. And she is in the process of going through your things, and she finds your journal, and she has sat to take a rest, and she is reading the last chapter of your journal. It could be the last chapter of the book that never got published. In your last chapter, you're having a conversation with your daughter, and telling her that your secrets to life, your successes in life, and how she should live her life and what was really important to you and what she should be taking from life instead of chasing materialistic things and how to be a good human. So I want you to right now in audio version, okay, because Audible is the second part of literature because people don't read, they listen to books. But I want you to go ahead and write and talk directly to your daughter. You can speak to her as if you have pen in hand and you're in a room with a candle lit, as you do to let your parents know. You're probably sitting there with a candle now. If I'm right, raise the candle up. All right, because that light takes you out of the shadow.
Yeah.
And I want you to go ahead and speak directly to your daughter with pen in hand and pen to paper. What would you write and tell and share with your daughter?
Hmm. Well, I would tell her, as I have, that she's the most important thing to me in the whole world, that life is so precious. And she has struggled with depression and she's very hard on herself. And I would say, Nicole, see your light. Your light is so bright, and don't be afraid of shining that light on it touches everyone who comes in contact with you. And I know that sometimes you don't see it, but I want you to believe in yourself. You have everything you need within you. You are a gift to so many, to your boyfriend, to his little brother whom you're raising because their mother died. You've given so much to that family that you have made your own, and you can do anything you want to do. You can do anything in your heart and in your mind that you put your mind to. And I'm so proud of you. You're such a hard worker and such a little hustler. And I just want you to have the best life that you can possibly have. And I love you.
Almost made me cry. All right. So I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story. Um, thank you for your advice you've given me. You've helped me, believe it or not, in having these conversations because one thing I know that during the holiday times for men, emotional mental health is strong for men, and suicide rate goes sky high, especially for men of color. We'll talk about that one day and how to deal with that, and hopefully we'll trump some of those conversations and save lives. But the nice thing about it is that you pull back a couple layers of your story and you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and sharing your story to help heal other people. And I think the key point is to have these uncomfortable conversations with people that care about us and not just have someone that wants to share their story with you, but someone that will sit there and that will digest the conversation or have without regurgitating their last meal in their conversation. I think that's the key point because when this is your moment, you need to have your moment. And you sometimes it's just nice to be heard.
Hmm.
You don't need an answer to the questions because there's always when it comes to the loss of someone, there's always more questions than answers. So in life itself, because you're moving on and you're living, and I'm going to add you to a list of people that I have in my personal life to ask them to share the secrets of their success. So I've got 100 people that I have listed that will share their secrets to life and their success, not on their bank account, not on their business or whatever. It's just what makes them a good human being. Because I think right now we need good human beings. We need people that care about one another.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
what are your secrets to your success?
Not giving up, um, and not listening to the inner demons that say you can't, you're not enough, you're not good enough. Why would anyone listen to you? Those things like don't don't listen to those things, those voices. They're not true. It's not true. Um, and persevere. I would say find a way. I would say that's something I got from my mom. There's always a way. Find a way to make it happen, whatever it is, and be kind. Just be kind because you don't know what somebody else is going through. The kind of kindness that you would want someone to extend to you, extend that to somebody else because you just don't know. And realizing that taking the time to be grateful. Gratitude can really shift your perspective. And a lot of the things that you've said about tomorrow is not promised. I tried to always find something to be grateful for, even in the middle of taking care of my mom. I was so grateful that I had the time that worked out that we were able to be there. My daughter was with me, and then we got the chance to really make her feel loved. She was that person who always did for everybody else. And we got to do that for her. And that was an honor. And that's one of the reasons I think why, so you talked about people having guilt. I felt like we really did everything that we could for her. And I think people should do everything they can for the people they love and just don't take them for granted because they might not always be there.
I asked this question, and the reason why I asked this because most people on a podcast they want you to like, comment, or share. I'm probably the only podcaster that will tell you that if you subscribe to my podcast, I ask that you're a person of high integrity and a high call to action. I surround myself with people that get things done, people that help other people. My friends and my circle of friends and associates, they don't drive by an accident, they stop and help. From the first time that I said this, or a version of what I'm saying, I've had 6 people that have answered this question, and I've had 5 people address and answer the needs of 6 people, total strangers. So when I ask, if you had one ask, and you can ask for more, or one thing that can change your life, or something that you needed, you had one ask, and someone out of the blue can answer this ask. And note it, most people live their whole lives without having one dream come true. So I want you to think deeply about this. Take a deep breath in when I'm rambling, trying to let you get set up, and then to ask you, what would your ask be? So, Julie Trainer, if I was to ask you, what would your ask be? Let us know what you would say.
Um, you've already touched on it actually. I would really like support in getting my book out there and finished, even before October 25th of 2025. I feel like we all need community, and been a dream that's been on my heart for such a long time. So whatever might be holding me back, I would like that. I would like that to get out there in the world for my daughter and for anybody, one person that might be helped by my story.
I am very confident that someone's going to reach out to you and help you to get your book out there because I'm a pain in the butt when it comes to getting things done. I mean, half of the things we do here at RMK Productions, and I'm going to say it just the way we don't say it on my website, we help busy people get shit done. That's what
I
we
love
do.
it.
So I'm going to make sure you get your book out before your mother's anniversary day for her birthday. And I know there's someone out there. There's a woman's group, Monique Wells. And hopefully, when you hear this story, that you have power in the publishing business and helping other women. That this is a story that you embrace. And if anyone else is out there that's in a position that can help, um, there's only so much information we can cover in a podcast because people's attention span is short. But I've been reading rough cut of her memoirs. I won't say memoirs, your story. It is a story worth being told, and it should be read by many, and it's going to help a lot of people. So, someone is sitting in the dark. Julie's book, whenever it comes out, will bring you into the light. I can promise you that. So, Julia, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And to my listeners, I want you to think about this. The thing that brought you to your current moment would always keep you there. Embrace change. And remember, just because one life ends doesn't mean your life has to end with it. As long as you have breath, you have to live. You grow by the mistakes you make. It makes you a better person. To have confidence, you must address your anxieties. To forgive yourself, you must hold yourself accountable. To learn, you must unlearn some stuff in life. I always say, live your life like it was the last day that you were here on earth. Laugh like it was how you made your living. And to love like you were writing your own story, like Julie's going to be doing soon. And to exist, you must show up today as more than you were yesterday. You have to understand the power of your words. Your words will either be repeated long after you're gone, or your words will be silenced by the end of your life. This is a mindset from me. My friends call me the mindset messenger. I want to thank all of my listeners for tuning in and listening to Julie Trainer's story. We've covered a lot of information, and this story was very personal. If you're sitting and looking through your window, through a view that's different from ours, come on my show and tell your story. If you have connected with Julie's story, reach out to her and share, join her community. It's growing. And just live your life. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions. If you want to see more of us, go to my YouTube page at RMK Productions and Network. And like I said, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the way that I look at subscribers. And Julia, I want to thank you so much. My grandfather always said that when you get to a place in life that you can help someone else out, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Julie Trainer, thank you again. You're my hero. You're a gift. And with that said, we'll fade to black. And we're out.